So we are reading At the Dark End of the Street, Black Women, Rape and Resistance, A New History of the Civil Rights Movement from Rosa Parks to the Rise of Black Power by Danielle McGuire. And our sessions it started June 3rd and they last until July 29th. They are from 6:30 to 8.
You know, the other piece of this question is what can be done about it. And, you know, nothing can be done about it while you're asleep.
Very true.
And we don't want to feel the emotion for very, you know, I was having a very brief Facebook discussion today where one of my good Facebook buddies, Agi Tayemba, was asking, are there any leaders young that we see among young people on the cover of Masada, or, you know, people. The point that I was trying to make was that, you know, we really have to have leadership in all areas, in every field of endeavor, not just the mass movement kinds of leaders that we used to have. But I don't know. Anyway, I kind of lost where I was going with this. So somebody else talk. Labib, I know you have something to say. What is it?
Okay.
Well, just to kind of tie together the thoughts that I heard from everybody here. I think, you know, we all agree that our present day situation, you know, as serious and as traumatic as it is, has a history, and it has a history that's began really here in America with the slave trade and the making of the slave. When we were captured and brought here, we were a free people. We were a human people. We were a people who had a sense of self, a knowledge of self, a sense of family, and a knowledge of family, and a sense of community, and a knowledge of that community, and you know, certain laws, if you will, or mores by which we all agreed upon and we all followed. And it was the slave making process that broke the human ties of dignity and self-respect and intelligence and protecting one another and living up to certain values. It was the slave making process that broke those ties. And that slave making process was a very brutal, make no mistake, a very brutal process by which black women were turned against black men were turned against black women. As time went on, lighter skinned blacks were turned against darker skinned blacks, and darker skinned blacks against lighter skinned blacks, and that whole dynamic, so that there was created an insecurity amongst ourselves, so that to this day we don't trust each other. To this day, we have a trauma about opening up about this process that made us who we are to this day. So we've been unable to engage seriously and continuously in a healing process. Is one of the points that were brought up. We are still living the trauma, because the conditions really that broke our humanity are still breaking our humanity today, and it starts very, very early in each of our lives. And unless we have you know, we've been fortunate enough to have been born into a situation of protectiveness and love and intelligence, we virtually then have no protection against the greater factors that come into play very early in our lives. For example, if you have a mother, an expecting mother, who does not have knowledge of self and knowledge of health and so on and so forth, and doesn't have the means and the resources to properly care for herself, that she is now with child, then those factors adversely affect the child that she's about to give birth to. It increases the mortality rate. It increases the morbidity rate. And then if the child is born into let's just say, generally speaking, a poverty kind of a situation where, again, resources are limited, so on and so forth, then the child, the opportunity for that child to grow up healthy physically, emotionally, psychologically, and educationally also become limited or restricted. And then you now enter that child into a public school situation. 9 times out of 10 this is a situation, and that public school system is a part of that human breaking institution. Then that child is further not protected during a critical developmental period in that child's life. So, long story short, as we evolve in our lifetimes through the generations, virtually we've had no healing process to the trauma that was inflicted upon us initially under the slave making process, and then under Jim Crow, and then right up to this day. We haven't had a healing process. We haven't had an education process by which we can be made aware of who we are currently and how we became who we are, and we don't have an education process that tells us about who we were before we came into the hands of the wolves in which we're in today. So we're ill-equipped, and we're kept ill-equipped to deal effectively with our condition. So it's not a wonder that we're still stuck in it and looking around and wondering how we're going to get out of it. You see. And then as far as to Vanita's point, I'll close with this: the trauma aspect that Vanita so vividly expresses. Because we haven't received the healing, we don't know how to properly deal with our problems. So what we do is we project our problems onto our brother and onto our sister, and we don't even see our brother and our sister as such, but we see them as the nigger, excuse my language, and the bitch. We see them as the lowest creatures, subhuman, just the way the system of human breaking did to us and intended for us to carry it out through the generations. And I interject the little booklet, Willie Lynch. The Willie Lynch letter, The Making of the Slave. I refer to that because the intention in that human breaking process was to ensure through the generations that then we, the broken human beings, would continue the process of breaking each other. And we see that happening today with all the violence that's going on in the communities where we're in concentrated numbers, and in the families where we're turning on each other. You see, and that was the intention of the human breaking process, or the making of the slave process. So
I remembered my point just as soon as you started talking, Labib, and you said the word history, because the dialogue that I was referring to on Facebook, someone had said, was there anybody like a Gil Noble, and they didn't understand how we had lost the program. I don't think the program was national, but it was in New York, but it was a wonderful educational program
Yeah.
hosted by Gil Noble for many decades, and called
I
Like
tuned
It
in.
Is.
I tuned in
Mhm.
every Sunday virtually without fail for that
No,
program.
I did too for a lot of years, and after he passed, um, Simo Tap and James McIntosh. Simo Tap works on, I think it's committee something something for media images favorable to black people. And they put on a march outside of ABC to, I think they wanted Ilumbe Breath to be the new host, but to continue with the Like It Is name and in the Like It Is spirit. But ABC was not having it. And so they started a show called Here and Now.
Okay.
where,